Okay, it is April 9th, 2025 at 6 p.m. I'm going to call the City Council meeting to order. Will you please stand with me to say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Move through roll call. Councilman Loy,
Here.
Councilwoman Kesty,
Present.
Councilwoman Diamond,
Present.
Councilman Henderson,
Here.
Councilman Cock,
Present.
Councilman Burns,
Present.
and Councilman Lavaca.
Here.
Thank you all. Moving into approval of the agenda with possibly one little shift, and that will be the presenter for the Skagit Transit Long-Range Transit Plan. He stated that he would not be able to be here until about 6:30. So I'm just going to work through the agenda until we see him online. So if that works for everybody?
Madam Mayor, I'd
Yes.
make a motion to approve the agenda. Could I make a suggestion, because we have Nikki online?
Yes.
Can we do executive session first?
Yeah, if the council would like to do that, we could do that.
Sure.
Okay, all right. So Nikki, would you be okay with that?
Absolutely, Mayor. I would say about 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes, all right. So let's approve the agenda with the change, putting executive session first. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, and then real quick, let's do the consent agenda. Items 1 through 6. Do we have approval?
Motion to approve.
All right.
Second.
All right, we have motion and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, with that, we are going to move into executive session. It is 6:02. It'll be about 10 minutes, so back here at about 6:12. Thank you. We'll be back.
You know I always do. Thank you.
No, you've been coming with plenty of them lately.
Well, you know, I'd like to keep you on your toes. If I came every time like that.
Kevin, we get a little extra help.
You know, it's amazing when you end up being an old cripple, how friendly everybody is. I would have known, and they would have never known that.
You're not an old cripple.
Oh, my gosh.
I might be, but.
Okay, the council is back from executive session, and it is 6:14, and we are going to move on with the agenda. We have already covered items A through C, A through E, actually. Now on to item F, City Administrator Report. Charlie is on vacation. He'll be back on Monday. So not unless something was relayed to you, Chief?
No, ma'am, nothing.
Okay, so we'll move on to council reports, and I'll start with you, Councilman Loy.
I actually have nothing to say this week.
Okay, all right, very good. Councilwoman Kesty?
Thank you. The Sedro-Woolley Museum would like to invite you all to participate in the Two Lights for Tomorrow, which commemorates the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. Two lights symbolizing courage and unity. All you have to do is hang two lights in your home or your business on Friday, April 18th.
Very good, thank you. Okay, Councilwoman Diamond?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilman Henderson?
Thank you. I just got three things. The first constituent reached out about shoulder grading in the vicinity of 7th and Sterling. He was just wondering if that was going to be happening this year. He was interested to see that happen. He asked me if they were going to grade the shoulders this year, and I said I would ask. So I can always follow up with you later on that, Bill. Okay, thank you. Second, in regards to the GoldenEye Best Program, yesterday there was an executive order released by the White House to fight bad policies the states impose, bad energy policies the states impose on their citizens. The whole executive order is here online on whitehouse.gov. And with that information, I would urge us as a city to send a letter to the U.S. Attorney's Office as it suggests on this executive order in opposition to the GoldenEye Best Program. And there's a timeline on there of 60 days of the release of this executive order, so on and so forth. That order was released yesterday, and the order is called Protecting American Energy from State Overreach. And so that's it on the BEST program. Next, I'd like to talk about Senate Bill 5798 being discussed right now in the Ways and Means Committee. And I feel that it's important that we as a city represent our citizens by passing an ordinance, keeping our tax increase rates as is, meaning the 1% and not the uncapped to the 3%. I spoke with our county assessor, Danny Hagan, today on the phone at great length about the different intricacies of what could happen in this bill as it proceeds through the floor, and if it passes and doesn't pass. And so he said he'd love to come in after the session is over and speak to us about that. But I would like staff to draw up an ordinance to give peace of mind and protection to our hardworking families of Sedro-Woolley, and I'd like to do that by motion if necessary.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to,
We have a motion for staff to write an ordinance keeping what our 1% cap on levy right now as passed back in 2005, as is.
so unless that bill has changed, the council does, if it passes the way that I had read it a couple weeks ago, the council does have the opportunity to keep it at 1%. It's the council vote to either increase or decrease.
We do, and I understand that, and I appreciate that fact of the matter. However, there are some timelines on here in the bill. One is September 1st for the Department of Revenue to pass the information on to the assessor, and then for the assessor to pass the tax information on to us by October 1st of this year. And so I'd like to see us move quickly on this to ensure that we're not raising our taxes more than what was voted on
Okay.
in order to do that.
And this is Bill,
This is Senate Bill 5798. And there's a matching House bill. It's not the same number, but it hasn't started moving through the House yet. It hasn't been introduced.
okay. I know that they've changed it up too, and it's tied to the population. And so I think it's really important that if that is the case, that also the council has the opportunity to read both those bills, to assess both those bills, so that when they go to vote, they know exactly what they're voting on. I don't know if this really would make a difference, because still, again, it would be any council that would come in after you, if they wanted to raise it to 2%, they could.
Right, they could, and then they'd have to be on record
Right.
going against.
So,
a,
okay, so then let me be clear, then what you're saying is that you really want to go on record saying that we don't want to raise it any more than 1%?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay. So,
and-
because we can't, it's not going to change anything.
Right.
Right, okay.
And so that's why I made the motion to have staff draw up an ordinance stating that, so we can discuss it as a council and either pass it or it does not pass through this council.
So I have a motion that's been presented to the council from Councilman Henderson, seconded by Councilman Lavaca, and that is to request that staff write up a policy? Ordinance, okay. That the cap on our tax will remain at 1%.
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and opposed, same sign. All right. Okay, very good. You're welcome. And anything else, Councilman Henderson? Okay. Councilman
Sorry,
Kopp?
that's it for me. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, I again received complaints of speeding on Fruitdale and McGargyle, especially around the time when school lets out, and also in the evenings. I guess we have a hot rodder on Fruitdale at night. So it's, these people, especially on Fruitdale, they live right, they're a sidewalk distant from the highways or the road. So and the speed limit there is 25, and I regularly am passed. So that's all
Okay.
for me.
All right, thank you. Councilman Burns?
I was asked to pass something on to the council from Becky at Helping Hands Food Bank. This year, the AmeriCorps has recognized Helping Hands Volunteer Service Award for serving Washington for the Northwest region. And that's awesome that they were recognized at a state-level organization for what they're doing in our community.
That is very cool. Thank you for sharing that, and congratulations to Helping Hands. Not surprised, though. They do an excellent job.
Yes,
So,
they do.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lavaca?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today, we had a committee meeting for Public Works, and I want to thank you, Director Bullock, for being not only a part of that as the liaison, but a wonderful discussion we had last week on that. You've presented your ideas with updating our TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program, to make it more easily to read, a simple map with some highlights, numeric coding, and then a graph, so that way we can quickly see what changes are taking place in the city, and then posting that on our website, which is, it's really good to see that. It's not only good for the residents here to be able to see projects that are taking place and then have input on maybe some road improvements or potholes, things like that, but also to be able to, advocate for some of these grants that we're looking at doing. So great job on that. Other things we talked about on that one was, possibly figuring out a way with IT, the director or the chair of the IT committee, of QR codes that we can post near certain areas that would link them right to the website, whether it be Public Works so they can go on and make a recommendation for potholes or road improvements, or parks so they can look at parks or whichever. But utilize QR codes more often in our signage that would link people to the website, so that would be good. Throw that out your guys' way. The Tulip art show over there at the Locals was a hit. I really enjoyed that. I went down there on Saturday and enjoyed all of those paintings, which was really awesome to see here in Sedro-Woolley. I hope that we can do that more often. I got a lot of those at my house as far as the print, so really seeing the paintings and the photos were quite awesome. On the 3% increase for property tax that was mentioned by Councilman Henderson, that is something that when AWC put forth their recommendations, that was included in that recommendation. It's been a hot topic for a while, so I remember having that discussion. I would agree that 1% is something that would be necessary or helpful for our community for increase, for sure.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, the council has control over that, so.
Yeah, we definitely do, and I think the stance to say that, you know, another council would come in and kind of slip that through of a 2 or 3% increase and start seeing that increase through compound interest over time, they would actually have to make a concerted effort to change that and then now release that and then start voting that in. So that would be a little bit more onus on that council. So, at least we'd be taking.
Yeah,
You know, if I might, you know, I don't see how that can possibly be legal, trying to affect a future city council, telling them what to do. You can't tell future city council what to do. It's up to them, but when he's talking about putting out a resolution or something that say we're against future raises, that's one thing, but we can't tell a future city council what to do.
right, yeah, they'll still have the opportunity.
yeah.
But it is making a statement by all of you that you want to keep it at 1%. And you're right, future council can come in and they, if it
But when he's talking about
passes-
an ordinance,
Well, any
basically-
council can change an ordinance, like we put no painting on, or painting that goes on fences that the homeowner needs to remove within 15 days. So any council can come in and change that ordinance. So it's just putting a little bit more onto that council to
yeah, but
think
it's
about what
probably
they're about
not
to do.
legal. You can't tell a future city council what to do. I mean, I'm not against the idea, I just don't see how
So
that would be legal.
I think it's just a statement. Nikki, do you want to weigh in on this? Kind of maybe ease some of the confusion?
Sorry, Mayor, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty since we left exec session. I would agree that you can't bind a future council. If a future council wants to make a different decision, then they can do that.
But we could do a resolution and tell everybody you're against it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Isn't it true, Nikki, that all they would do is vote to change that ordinance, and then that would open them up for now raising the tax? So it would be a two-step rather than one step? Just like if we wanted
Correct.
to do something that's different than our municipal code or an ordinance, we can vote as a collective body against something that a different council had put into place. Like, let's say, no
Correct.
camper vans in our community, right? We can vote that camper vans are allowed in our community, and it would be changing the ordinance set by a different council. They did not set our rate.
Correct. So your policy decisions might be different than a policy decision by a council in the future. And in order to change the policy direction, you would adopt an ordinance that changes the municipal code to reflect your policy decision or the next council's policy decision.
Right. Thank you, Nikki. And just kind of input, because I sit on the AWC legislative agenda, the reason that that was actually put forth had to do with the fact that with cost of living, well, 1% didn't even keep up prior to the cost of living. Now that we have cost of living and the increases, there are several communities where they just cannot, even if they pass the 1%, and several of them do on a regular basis, they cannot keep up with the cost to keep the city running, which is our responsibility, to keep the city running. So that was the reasoning behind it. Go ahead, Councilman Cock.
Yeah, I sat on a committee for AWC, and there was like 40 people or 30 people on it, and I think AWC has sort of probably on those recommendations throws in something to help everybody, because the big cities have much different needs than the little tiny ones, especially in eastern Washington. So they
Right.
probably threw that in there. My guess is a lot of cities do the 1% and nothing else.
Right. Yep.
Well, I talked to Danny today about some of that, and he said, you know, this would be an option for us to do. And if we needed more money, just like when we needed money for the fire department or the police, we go to levy. If we need to ask for more, we let the voters decide. So, so for like, you know, those smaller municipalities that might be suffering, that's something that they need to think about doing. Oftentimes, we didn't opt for a tax increase this last time because it wasn't needed. And so, I just don't see the reason to not put something in place to potentially protect our future taxpayers and actually to keep the housing costs down too.
Councilman Lloyd?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't push my,
Okay, all right. Okay, with that, moving on, I only have a couple items. First off, the Friday night event, the opening for the tulip exhibition. It was well received by the community. We had a lot of people who were there between 7 and 9. Nicole Rusin, who is actually the director of the Tulip Festival, was there and spoke for a little bit. It's a very exciting event, and it's exciting for the city. This is a city-sponsored event that we are doing in cooperation with the local shop, who have brilliantly hung them and displayed them and are willing to make those available to the public from Saturday to Saturday. So it'll end, the last day will be this coming Saturday. So the public can actually see the original painting. So a huge thanks to the local shop, that is Jackie Russell and Rochelle Benson, for working with the city to make that happen. The other thing is actually sitting in front of you, and just to let you know that that North Star is having a symposium, and it is happening June 6th it's actually happening all day, but on June 6th from 9 to 8 to 10:30, if you just want to come to hear about what it is, what the objectives are that we are trying to do in North Star, that would be an opportunity. Or June 10th between 6 and 8 p.m., which would be at the Skagit Public Health. But it's actually just to enhance understanding and clarity of what North Star's initiative is about, and to connect with fellow council members, learn more about what they're doing and what they see as challenges. Also to explore the alignment and leverage of funding and how that makes a bigger impact when we bring our funds together. Any discussion that you may want to have regarding the opioid settlement funds, and also to gauge interest in formalizing a partnership with our cities, with North Star, for the benefit of creating services and a safer community. So please give that consideration. It's all the information and more is in front of you here in this sheet, and I appreciate you giving that some attention. So with that, I see that our speaker for presentation is online presenting the Skagit Transit long-range goals. So Sam Zimbabwe, am I saying your name correctly?
Yeah, you are. Perfect.
Okay. And do you have somebody with you? I see maybe, is it just you who's going to be doing the presentation, Sam, or somebody with you?
I'll be doing the presentation. Malaya Kuzminski is I think in the audience there from Skagit Transit.
Ah, okay, perfect. Hello, greetings, welcome.
She is brand new, and so still getting up to speed on everything.
Okay.
And so I'll be giving the presentation.
All right, very good. Thank you, Sam. We'll let you move forward.
Sounds good. I will share my screen. I think I have the ability to do that. This is a presentation that was sent out, I think maybe to you all beforehand, but it'll just be easier if I run the show and can keep things moving. And please do let me know if you have any questions as we go. There's a lot of information here, but happy to go at whatever speed. And if I'm going too long, don't hesitate to tell me to pick up the pace. So the long-range transit plan that we've been working on with Skagit Transit is really to provide a guide for the next 5 to 10 years of investment in transit service across Skagit County, and to make sure that the current service and near-term changes are really aligned with Skagit Transit's mission, vision, and values. Through looking at the long term, we've also looked at short-term things that can happen within the existing resources that Skagit Transit has. And when I say resources, that is buses to run service and operators to operate the service and space to do all the maintenance and activities. So within those existing resources, but then also where there's opportunities for growth in thinking about new routes or new services if additional resources are available. And then the work that we've done over the course of the past year is really based, or it's sort of follow up to the last time this kind of longer range look was done, which was in 2018, which is a little bit of a gap. And so trying to make sure that there's regular opportunities for evaluating what we're talking about in terms of short-term changes, that there's regular opportunities to think about how to refine and update service as Skagit County continues to grow. So we've been working at this for about a year, starting out looking at existing conditions. So when we were looking at existing conditions, we were really looking at 2023 data often. We did some engagement over the course of a couple times during 2024, both in the spring and in the fall. The spring was really to get a sense for how people across the county are using transit, where they're not able to use transit, and sort of what might make transit more useful. And then over the course of the fall, we brought out some initial service ideas based on what we were seeing from that data analysis. And then we've taken that feedback, refined that into what you'll see today, which is a proposed plan that will be coming out for a 30-day public comment period early next week. And then once that's done, we'll talk about at the end, Skagit Transit is ready to move into some early stage implementation right away once the long range vision is set. So really quickly, I'll go through some of those existing conditions and where we heard feedback, those system-wide recommendations, a little bit more on the implementation timeline, and then talk briefly about route by route recommendations, particularly focused on Sedro-Woolley and how it would affect your community, and then happy to take any questions at all. So as we were looking across the county, one of the real strengths of Skagit Transit right now is it's serving lots of different places, and it's serving all of the places where more people live in Skagit County. It's a big county, lots of different communities. In general, the routes that Skagit Transit has are serving populations that have a larger need for transit service, providing connections to jobs and services that people are trying to get to, health centers, other types of shopping, those types of things, Skagit Valley College. And there's also really good and continued investment in operator facilities, and then also places for people riding transit. There's also places around all of that to continue improvements. Where we saw some challenges and what we heard from this sort of built on what we saw in the data, but also what we heard from community members is that there's sometimes infrequent service. Sometimes service takes a long time to get where people need to go. And then there's limited service on evenings and weekends that make it harder for some folks to access transit and to make it really useful. A little bit of existing conditions, and these are two graphs that I'll explain just a little bit because they put some different numbers together. How people are using across the system right now. The left-hand graph is daily riders. So how many people are riding Skagit Transit service on a daily basis? And you can see that there's about twice as many people are riding on a regular weekday as on a regular Saturday, and then Sunday service is still lower. There's a number of routes that don't run on Sundays, and so some of that's reflected there. But this is pretty typical for what transit services see across Washington and across the country. One thing that's a little bit more unusual for Skagit Transit is that we see more ridership in the middle of the day, in this midday 10 to 4 period, than we see in sort of what we would traditionally see as peak periods in either the morning or the evening. Those are the numbers on the graph on the right are total riders over the course of the year. So we saw about twice as many people riding in a midday as in either a morning or an evening. And that's a little bit unusual, tells us a little bit more about how people are using the system. More people are using the system to get to shopping or other appointments, doctor's visits, things like that, than they are sort of traditional work trips that we would often see transit serving. When we went out to do community events, and we did community events in a lot of different ways, we came to, Skagit Transit hosted some open houses. We also went to things like farmers markets, different events. We had a couple of events in Sedro-Woolley. We also had an online open house, sort of place where people could drop pins on a map if they weren't able to come to one of our meetings. And we had some surveys available for people who weren't able to come to a meeting. So through all of that, we got over 600 different themes that we heard from people. The most common of those were around increased frequencies, increased span of service, so running buses earlier and later into the day, and really particularly on the later end, we heard a lot of people requesting service later, and then trying to improve some of those connections across the region, both within Skagit County, but also people are making connections up to Whatcom County, down to Snohomish County, down to King County. People are using transit to go pretty long distances, and that makes it challenging for folks too. We also heard, and we'll talk a little bit more about some new transit service types, on-demand service, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that is. We heard about the need for reliability for those folks that are making trips across county lines and using multiple services. The benefits that integrated fare payment would provide, and then some comments on trying to make sure that routes were as direct as possible from point A to point B. So really big picture, this long range plan is a roadmap for ongoing investments. This is going to set out some big ideas that really over the next 5 to 10 years, Skagit Transit can seek grant funding or sort of figure out how to implement with additional resources. But there are short range refinements that I'll talk about that set the stage for those longer term investments. So we think that what we're proposing as a sort of restructuring of routes can be something that can last for a really long time, and then more service, more frequency, more span of service can be layered in as there's more resources available. And that'll also continue investment in the capital side of things. Some of the things that the riders experience a little bit more behind the scenes, but really do experience in terms of the reliability of buses, the comfort of places to wait for your bus, transfer between buses and things like that. And then, as I mentioned, really some good opportunities for ongoing engagement and collaboration with cities and with riders. We know there's a lot of growth and change happening in Sedro-Woolley right now, and so there needs to be some adaptability as this plan goes forward to meet some of those changes that are happening in your community too. So really what our long range recommendations focus on are simplifying and streamlining some of the routes, trying to make things as simple and straightforward as possible, trying to get to some minimum standards where ideally a bus is coming at the longest time between buses on any route would be an hour, with some buses seeing a lot more frequent service than that, and then trying to have later hours across the system and making sure that a bus that's coming on a weekday is also coming on Sundays. Some of those, as I'll talk about those, some of those will take additional resources, so they aren't part of this short-term change, but as the system continues to grow, that's where we see some layering in of additional service over the course of the long range. Some of where we see some of these challenges right now, we have some places where there's a little bit of duplicative service. So on the western side of the county, we've got the Route 513 going from Chuckanut Park and Ride to March Point, and also the 40X going from Skagit Station to March Point. Both of those are coming at about an hour frequency. But you can see the 40X going from Skagit Station to March Point is getting substantially more riders each day than that 513, but they're both about the same service level. So that might be a place where there's a bit of duplicative service that could be streamlined. We also see some inconvenient connections between communities, and here's a real place where we saw some challenges in Sedro-Woolley and some real opportunities too. There's a couple of different buses that are helping people make connections to really important destinations. 70X is coming from Concrete and going to Skagit Station. It's sort of serving downtown Sedro-Woolley, but not as best as it can. It's coming through in one direction, but not in the other. We also have the 301 that's going to Chuckanut Park and Ride from Sedro-Woolley Park and Ride. And then the Route 305 is serving one of the most important destinations in the transit system, Skagit Valley College. We see a lot of ridership going there and connecting to Sedro-Woolley. You know, the 70X is coming about once every 3 hours, and we've heard that's really a place where it's really hard to plan trips when a bus is coming once every 3 hours. Those other two, 301 and 305, are coming every 60 minutes. And then in some other parts, we've got some places where we've got really good direct service, and then some places where there's a little bit more infrequent routes that are a couple places where there's one-way loops that are great for people who are going in the direction of travel, but a little bit hard if you're trying to go upstream from that one-way loop. You're riding the bus for a long time to get back to your destination. So when we look at across the county and at the recommended network, there's a couple of things to point out, and I'll walk through these in a little bit more detail. Some changes in how to connect folks to from Sedro-Woolley to Mount Vernon, and really trying to think about some one-seat rides that get people from downtown Sedro-Woolley to Skagit Station on a regular basis, and some tweaks then to the 70X, also some changes to the 301 to get people over to the airport and some of the new jobs that are coming in over there, making sure we have the same coverage of service, but changing a little bit of how people get from point A to point B, and then also making some connections from Sedro-Woolley up to Job Corps and the Upper Skagit Reservation as well. And then I'm happy to dive into the other parts of the county, but in the interest of time, I'll keep it focused here. And then if we want to get into some of those as part of the discussion, we're happy to do so as well. When we look at it across the whole system, there's a few places where we see some new service, some places where we've got some significant changes, and some of those significant changes are places where we are recommending discontinuing service and folding that service into other routes so that we maintain the same kind of coverage across the county, but are able to provide that service with the same resources in a more direct and frequent way. And then a lot of places where we're really not going to see a whole lot of change right now, but the opportunities for future changes with increased frequency and some of that span of service that I mentioned. Looking, we sort of divided the county up into pieces to just do a little comparison of how things are allocated in terms of service hours on an annual basis. Now in the green and in the future in the gold. So we see a little bit more service coming to the eastern part of the county as part of these short range recommendations. A lot of this is, again, this is rearranging things as they currently exist a little bit, service hour neutral right now. So a little bit more coming to the eastern part of the county, and making sure we have the resources to serve where people are trying to get to. And then wanted to talk a little bit more about, I mentioned before, on-demand transit, which is something that we studied sort of in parallel with some of these route changes. And on-demand transit is something in between a fixed route transit bus, the regular bus that comes every on a fixed schedule to regular stops, and paratransit, which is available for people who qualify for rides. Those rides can be point to point from your house to your destination, but they have to be booked at least 24 hours in advance. And there's some rules about who can qualify and what service geography there is. Other systems, both in Washington State and across the country, have started to pilot and test out different ways to provide on-demand service. And usually this is provided in a zone, in an area where people can request a ride either by calling or on an app, get picked up and dropped off without having eligibility criteria. So everybody would be eligible for this kind of service, be able to use it from point to point, but within that zone, and help people get to and from other transit services or the destinations they need to go to. So we looked at a few different zones across the county, including one in Sedro-Woolley. We looked at 5 different potential areas across the county. In the short term, as a pilot, based on a number of different characteristics and sort of how we were thinking about these service changes, Anacortes and Fidalgo Island really emerged as the top candidate, but Sedro-Woolley has a lot of opportunities if this proves to be a successful way to deliver service. So Skagit Transit has applied for some grant funding, waiting to find out some more details on that that would serve this sort of pilot area. And again, if that's successful, it's something that could serve sort of a zone in and around downtown Sedro-Woolley in the mid to longer term as a way to fill in some of the gaps that the fixed route transit can be better, but might still have some opportunities for circulating people within downtown. Beyond what I've talked about, there's a number of other investments in the long-range plan, facilities for passengers and operators, and that is investments largely in the existing transfer points, Sedro-Woolley Park and Ride being one of those that it has some investments. There's maybe some opportunities to make it more comfortable for passengers and for operators, and then continued investment in bus stops so that they are safe and accessible for people riding. We want to make sure we're covering fleet replacement and expansion over time too, and then thinking about the how to partner with cities on when there is a transit stop, how to make sure it's safe for people to get to and from that stop and cross the street and things like that. Little bit on implementation timeline, and then can get a little bit more detailed or get into questions and answers. As I mentioned, the short range, we are really at trying to keep the service hours neutral, the vehicles in service neutral right now. But we do see this opportunity to sort of ramp up and add in service in these places over time. And then if that on-demand service is successful, think about how to expand that to more and more parts of the county as well. And then I'll really quickly touch on the more detailed route recommendations, focusing in on your community, and then pause and take any questions you have. So I mentioned before some of those changes just to show existing and recommended of these routes side by side. We really think there's a great opportunity to take that 305 service that's going right now from Skagit Valley College to and from the Park and Ride, and make that a connection that goes all the way to Skagit Station on an hourly basis. make sure that we get that east-west connection through town on the 301 and have that go to the Chuckanut Park and Ride. That's a really important connection for north-south travel along I-5. And then also continue over to the airport. And as I mentioned, some of those jobs that are growing over there, that the 305 also, or 301 also makes some important health center connections as well. And I know you all are seeing a lot of growth on the on the sort of western side of downtown as well. So the 301 is a part of serving that. On the east side of town, connecting up to Job Corps and figuring out how to get a good stop location there, and then to the Upper Skagit Reservation. And then the 70X, as I mentioned, it comes sort of through town, but not directly, making sure people have a connection from Sedro-Woolley, east and west, both to the park and ride, but also to Concrete and East County up there as well. I do have some more detail on the center of the county and the western part. In the interest of time, I know I've been talking for a little while now. I can come back to this if there are any questions. Maybe I'll quickly touch on next steps and then open it up for any feedback you have. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we've been at this for about a year, working through the data, the analysis, the engagement that has gotten us to this point of making service recommendations. There'll be a comment period right now, starting early next week. Then the Skagit Transit Board will hopefully approve the final plan, and then Skagit Transit's ready to launch right into preparing for an initial service change that starts to implement the ideas in the plan, and that is sort of the beginning of a process that ends with that service deployment and making sure riders understand what's coming and sort of connecting with them to make sure people know what is changing and how to get from where they need to go, from where they are to where they need to go, and hopefully start to attract some more people who aren't riding transit now onto the great service that Skagit Transit provides. So with that, I'll pause. Happy to take any questions that you have.
Okay. Are there any questions for Sam? I see Henderson. Councilman Henderson, you have your.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Sam, for your presentation. A lot of good information there. I wanted to follow up on the on-demand pilot. You're going to start that in Anacortes. Have you seen through surveys and data a need for a pilot program that private industry like Uber or Lyft can't handle in that region?
Yeah, so part of the reason why Anacortes sort of rose to the top of those those zones that we talked about is that there's a route right now in Anacortes, the Route 409, that is providing fixed route service that is not getting a whole lot of ridership, but it's connecting some really important destinations. It's going from the Guimas Island Ferry to downtown and the senior center, and it's sort of touching a number of different places that ordinarily would be places that would see some transit demand. It's a little bit too far to walk, so there is sort of maybe this gap where there's people who are walking onto the ferry or who could walk onto the ferry, coming to Anacortes and trying to get to some of the different destinations downtown. I think Uber and Lyft, do provide that service, but it's pretty costly. And so, one of the reasons that people look to transit services is to make that trip affordable. So usually on-demand service, the fares are sort of more comparable to what a regular bus fare would be than Uber and Lyft ride. So I don't think that it's not supplanting that market for private operators, but it is maybe filling a gap where fixed route service is too much service right now for what how people are using it, but there's still a demand for some transit service that's affordable and reliable. And so the on-demand service is more like if you request a ride, you're getting one within 15 to 30 minutes. It's not as on demand as somebody's going to come pick you up in 2 minutes, but it is a bit more than that paratransit, which only certain people qualify for, and you have to book 24 hours in advance. So I don't know if that gets at answering your question, but it is like it's a little bit in that. It's sort of adding to the transportation ecosystem rather than trying to supplant some of those private operators.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up to that, if I could. Do you have other areas, like you said, Sedro-Woolley would be a good candidate for that. If this pilot program doesn't work in Anacortes, or if it does work, or maybe it doesn't work as well as you thought it would work, you'd be able to just take those assets that have been purchased and move them to a new location and start over again?
Yeah. And to be clear, like Scheduled Transit hasn't made 100% of like the decisions about how a service would be operated. There's a couple different service sort of operating models out there that are across the country. Some of those are turnkey operations where a private provider can provide the vehicles and the operators. Some of it is where you do end up purchasing assets and having those as part of agency assets. Scheduled Transit hasn't made those decisions yet about how to deliver this service. It's a little bit dependent on funding and sort of some of the nuances of how to deliver that service. The other thing that I should, it sort of goes back to your original question, but the vehicles that deliver on-demand service are also accessible for people with mobility challenges, which Uber and Lyft, aren't always accessible for people with those needs. And so that's a place where like those private operators may not be able to serve everyone in the community, where an on-demand service could help folks too.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Kesty?
Thank you very much for coming tonight and sharing all this information. I just wanted to also say a big thank you because I have several friends who utilize what I think you're calling the paratransit, and the independence that you guys are creating for them is just, it's really special to see, and your drivers are really awesome, and I just wanted to pass that on, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilman Koch, I believe he had his, yeah.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I also want to compliment, I worked with persons with disabilities for many years, and if it wasn't for SCAT, they literally would be sitting at home. They wouldn't be able to get out and be more part of our community. So thank you very much for that. I had two questions. They're a little different. The first is I commuted for 18 years for work in Bellingham. And so I took the 80X sometimes. One of the issues with that is it was really inconvenient to try to take a bus from Sedro-Woolley up there. So I would just drive up to, right by the I-5 intersection like everybody else did and park our cars there. And there's probably like 50 or 80 cars there every day. I don't know if there's any way to improve that, but I would recommend looking into that. Maybe that's something you can also look at. And the second, I guess I'm just making observations, is that we have our county has major manufacturing facilities, which are great and are important in East County, but they also bring with them the attendant effect of heavy traffic into Sedro-Woolley. So any way transit could help ameliorate that would be fantastic. So again, thank you very much.
And just kind of adding on to that, so something that has crossed my mind is I have often wondered, I sit on the transit board, I have wondered why Skagit Transit has not maybe contracted with like Janicki Industries to see if there couldn't be some way that a bus could run back and forth, say maybe from the Chuckanet station, if they rode the ADX, because I know a lot of them live up in Bellingham, if they rode the ADX down. But yeah, kind of working with industries, so Skagit Transit doesn't have to take all the weight on, but if they could work with the industries. Yes.
Yeah, I can give quick, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just want, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I can just
Oh,
really quick.
I
Those are both
apologize, Sam, I
great comments.
miscommunicated there. You're actually, Kim, is it Kim? Okay, Malia is here, and she's sharing regarding that.
Kim, can you turn on your mic?
Yeah. And just push the button till the blue light, you'll see the blue light come on.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Malia Kosminski, and I'm the new Planning and Outreach Manager with Skagit Transit. As Sam mentioned, I've only been here for 4 days, so I'm new, but I do have a pretty wholesome background in transit coming from Lewis County, where we saw a lot of the service recommendations that we're proposing here in this plan. We are working with Janicki to see about putting a bus pull-out in front of their facilities out in Hamilton, and then potentially looking at expanding the van pool program. So we hope to share more of an update, but that's definitely something we're looking at, and hope to have better feedback for you guys once we've commenced the public comment period, which opens Monday and runs until May 14th.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Oh, go ahead, Council.
Because I may have this wrong, and people who've lived here longer might remember, but I was told at one point you could take a bus from Sedro-Woolley or Skagit County, not the 70X, but just through the county down to Boeing. So it would be the same idea, I would think, up to Janicki, because, you know, they're a great employer and we want to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything we can do to support economic development and getting folks connected to family-sustaining positions is something we want to do. So, like I said, hope to give a better update here in a couple of months.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Burns?
Hope you don't mind a little more of a statement, because I'm on the transit board and I went through this and asked a number of questions myself, so I thought I might cover a few things you may or may not have thought of. They were working on getting Wi-Fi on the buses. They have Verizon service, and that should be going online soon. That will help people who are on the longer routes, especially people going to the college, do a little homework along the way. It was a net zero cost other than the pilot program in Anacortes. And I thought that was great, because I was thinking about the senior citizen who might not qualify for paratransit but isn't driving anymore and wants to get to that grocery store. It's difficult for them to get out on an icy day. Well, this would have somebody show up at their door, pick them up, take them to either the store or the bus that's going to get them to that store, and for $3 or less. Because the upside to them using the public transit as opposed to using Uber is that there is a cap on what it would cost for them for a day of use, whereas Uber obviously doesn't have any such cap. It takes 6 months for the new service results. I don't know if he covered that. And then April 14th is when that 30-day public comment comes up. So if you feel like sharing that on social media, get more people to say what they think about the routes that are proposed, and hopefully this works out well.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Madam Mayor?
Any more questions? Oh, go ahead, Councilman Lavaca.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say the ride share that is used over at Janicki it's packed quite a bit, which is a really good opportunity to see a van borrowed and used every day, multiple vans. So that's really good. And yeah, the bus stop is of big interest. I've seen the buses go through here in Sedro-Woolley, and oftentimes they look empty. And so I was actually going to ask about the cost of the general per hour of the run of the bus. You know, if the bus cost $100,000 and we get 50,000 hours out of it, or a 10-year use, you know, maybe we're paying $2 an hour there, the cost of the bus driver and that stuff. Do we have a cost per hour? I didn't see that. I know that Councilman Burns just mentioned a net zero cost. So maybe we could touch in on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. And so we did look at cost per hour. Some of that information is a little bit old. I think part of what we're trying to make sure with these long range recommendations and even these short range changes is to try to make, you know, every rider brings down that cost per hour. And so having places that are more direct can hopefully attract more riders, can help bring down some of that cost. There's also, there's a number of grants that Skagit Transit receives, and so it's a little bit hard to sometimes parse out exactly what, the cost per hour in different ways, but trying to make sure that it's reliable service that then attracts people onto it, and gets people where they need to go. And some of the, you see, as I mentioned, the 70X coming through town right now is once every 3 hours. And unless you really don't have another choice, that's a long time between buses to be able to go, unless it works absolutely perfectly for what you need. When you get down to something that's more like an hour or 30 minutes, it becomes a bit more reliable and feasible as a choice for how to get around. And so we do think that making some of these changes for how to get from point A to point B, making those more frequent, making sure they're reliable and safe and accessible for folks will help ultimately bring down the cost per hour of service too.
I was just curious, do you know the cost per hour to run a transit in just general in Skagit? That's what I was asking. Like, you got the bus cost, the maintenance, the tires, the fuel, the driver cost. What's an average cost per hour for running the transit bus?
I don't have that off the top of my head for the 2023 data, but we can follow up with that information for you.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I'm curious just on how much that is. And, different routes have multiple drivers and not. I've always used the bus system when I'm in cities, and I never really drove when I lived in cities, and I do enjoy them. And I use the bus system here from Port Angeles all the way to Sedro-Woolley multiple times, and you can actually take a bus all the way down to the coast. It's pretty awesome. So, yeah, thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think that's it. I want to thank you both for being here. Thank you, Sam, for a thorough presentation, taking time out of your evening and making us aware. So with that, we'll say goodnight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to public comment. It is 7:10 right now, and I'm going to open it up for public comment. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment at this time? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close public comment and we will move on to new business. We, at this time, do not have any unfinished business. The new business tonight has to do with amendments to Title 17 of the Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code, the off-street parking and loading. This is ordinance 209625, and this is a first read. And Ashton, you're going to be presenting this tonight.
I am. I'm going to present over here tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council. So this ordinance is quite the packet. There's a lot of changes coming from a lot of different players, and so I just wanted to give a brief overview about sort of who is requesting all of these changes, and then we can get into the discussion. So we started out last year in spring. City Council, as well as concerned citizens, they have both identified a lack of parking for multifamily residential uses, as well as visitor parking. So we have revised the residential parking requirements in the municipal code and created a new matrix or a table that consolidates all the parking regulations into one place, and it applies a new scaled approach. So smaller dwelling units that have like a studio or a one-bedroom are going to have smaller parking requirements compared to our larger houses and our larger apartments, which is where the insufficient parking is likely coming from. We also have some changes from the Planning Commission and the our department, Community Development. Those changes include the table, repealing all the parking regulations in the zoning chapters and moving them all to 17.36. It also includes clarifying the cooperative parking provisions. That way, developers as well as property owners that want to create shared parking agreements, it's a little clear what that process is and who they need to contact. We've also revised the loading facility section, so our larger residential developments are going to be required to provide loading zones or a loading dock. It'll be based on the amount of residential units that are in that building. So anything with 24 units or less, they won't be required to have a loading zone or a loading dock, but 25 units or more, you will begin to have that requirement, at least in the proposed amendments as they are now. And then lastly, our department is proposing a parking maximum for the Central Business District and the Urban Village Mixed-Use Overlay Zone only. Those maximums are above the minimum, so we still have a parking minimum that is going to be required. Those maximums are just to ensure that we don't have parking lots in our Central Business District that could be taking up valuable commercial and residential space. Lastly, the last sort of driver, as I've been calling them in this, is going to be the state legislature. All of the requirements that the state legislature is requiring the city this year have been referenced with an RCW in the proposed code. So more or less anything in the proposed ordinance is changeable at your discretion, except for those requirements from the state legislature that have an RCW attached to the end. Lastly, I just want to clearly state what isn't going to be changed in this ordinance. The minimum parking requirements for commercial, industrial, and public uses, those aren't going to be changed. We've just changed the location of where they are in the municipal code. On-street parking regulations, that's not going to change. This is all off-street private parking, as well as the amount of parking required for ADUs. We are not changing the parking requirement for ADUs, but you will see one provision in there with the RCW that's talking about the major transit stops. There are no major transit stops in Sedro-Woolley, but Commerce is requiring us to put it in our code. And so with that, I wanted to open it up to discussion.
Okay, thank you,
If-
Ashton.
yes.
I like how concise it was, so that's lovely. Any questions or comments for Ashton? Councilman Lavaca?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ashton, for putting that together. I appreciate the graft, too. I think it is a little bit cumbersome to sift through that, so I like that you're cleaning that up and doing the graft. Still reading through it, so not a whole lot of questions yet on how it works out, but it is nice to just kind of put that together and have that all laid out on one sheet and see how that's going to affect us. I think I'm just adding in the numbers of what's actually changing with the numbers of stalls we have, but it looks like what we've talked about.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Cock?
Yeah, I just simply want to say good work. You know, I agree, it's what we have discussed, and good work, and going forward, I mean, we can't control the legislature from here, so I thought it was a good way to adapt to that. I did have a question. Maybe it's more directed to the police. I've noticed downtown, as you drive through downtown, I'm seeing more pretty long vehicles that extend into the roadway, and a couple of times I've had to just stop. Because like, is that a case-by-case basis for police to say, hey, or is there somewhere else they can park? I mean, I don't want to prevent somebody from conveniently parking downtown, but it seems like a safety issue too.
We're actually having those conversations now in our senior management team. Yeah, that's something that I brought forth as well, because it is a safety issue as far as I'm concerned, and especially when they park up on the sidewalk. Yeah, tearing down the sidewalk, which our tax dollars have paid for, and also, what if they hit the gas when they're on the sidewalk and hit a, yeah. So, very good point. I'm glad that you brought that up. Thank you very much. Yeah, but it is a discussion, and it probably will become for you, yeah. And Councilman Lloyd?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, you talking about the legislature, is that what you're talking about with them wanting to reduce the amount of parking? Is that what you're talking about?
So there's a couple different Senate bills that have come out from the legislature that regard reductions to parking. I don't have that number off the top of my head. I do know for this one, it's Senate Bill 6015. I can't quite recall the parking reduction threshold for missing middle housing, you know, at what point cities are required to have missing middle housing with that parking reduction. I do know that Sedro-Woolley has not hit that population threshold yet. I just can't recall the specific number. I want to say 20 or 25,000.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? This is the first read. We can come back to it. Is this coming back at the next council meeting, or what are the thoughts there?
I anticipate the next council meeting. I don't have a confirmed date yet.
Okay. All right. All right. If that is it, then looking over the agenda, it looks like we have completed everything that we needed to touch on. If there is no objection, we are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
So the question I asked at my last meeting with Crystal, who runs the Skagit Transit, was why are we running these huge buses empty?
Well, that's, yeah.
And
Did you see that guy who made a diesel car to run 104 miles, right? He didn't change the fuel, didn't change the engine at all.
Okay.
Just the aerodynamics of the car, the type of